What's up guys? So today we're going to be making a video talking about Crown Zenith and 151 and which one is the better investment right now. So before we get into it, obviously quick reminder, we'll go over the cards. We'll start with Crown Zenith. Top cards, the Giratina V-Star, you have the Arceus V-Star, the Mew V-Star, the Origin Form Dialga V-Star, and the Origin Form Palkia V-Star. You also have the Leafeon V-Star Altart, Lessa Sparkle, a Glaceon, Arita. These are all cards over $15 essentially. You'll have the Suicune, the Raikou, Darkrai, and Entei, and Deoxys. A bunch of cards in this set. This set is very deep. We'll look at 151 now. Let's see, we got the Charizard, obviously, the Blastoise, the Venusaur, top cards, Full Art Charizard, Zapdos, Alakazam, Charmander, Squirtle, Blastoise Full Art, Charmeleon, Mew, and Bulbasaur. Those are, some of the top hits, and obviously you have some other ones. You have the Wartortle, the Pikachu, for some reason they're not loading on TCG Player right now, but that's okay. So what we're going to do to start is I'm going to tell you guys some numbers. So first of all, we're going to start with the top 5 cards and their values. So for 151, when we look at 151 over here, the top 5 cards are worth $260.86. When we look at Crown Zenith, that number is $259.30. So very, very close. 151 has a slight edge in top 5 value. When we look at top 10 value, 151 is $386.23, while Crown Zenith is $348.82. So 151 kind of breaks away a bit in the top 10, and we'll see further in the top 30. 151 value is $663.21, whereas Crown Zenith is $532.91. So once we get to the top 30 cards, 151 is actually pulling away quite a lot, but when we look at only the top 5 cards, Crown Zenith is putting up a really good fight. Now, before I go any further in this video, I just want to quickly come in here and say that 82% of you guys, 82.3% of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed. So if you can subscribe to the channel, if you're finding value through this content, I really appreciate it. That's all I'm going to say on that. Now, the one thing I want to get into here, right, is even though 151 has higher value right now, we've seen Crown Zenith get reprint after reprint, including a massive reprint towards the end of last year. Now, why is this important when we talk about card value? Well, obviously, if there's more reprints, that means more boxes are going to be open, which means there's going to be more cards out there. More cards, if the demand doesn't keep up with the supply, that's going to bring price down. Now, this is one of my hypotheses for 151. A lot of these cards, I think, are kind of inflated right now because there hasn't been a massive reprint for 151. We have seen, obviously, some restocks, and fair enough with that. And I do think there is a ton of demand for the product. But I also think a ton of demand is coming from just investors in general and people speculating that this is going to be a very long-term hold that's going to be prosperous in the long term. And that's why, there's kind of a divide between how much supply there is on the open market and how much is actually being opened. So yeah, I do think it's interesting, and obviously I don't know, I'm just speculating on all this, it's impossible to know. With that said, I do think if there's a massive reprint of 151, a lot of these prices will tank, and I do think if there is that reprint, Crown Zenith values will actually be higher than 151, especially in the top 5 and potentially even in the top 10, depending on what happens. Again, that's just card value. That's talking a little bit about supply and what's out there. Final note on reprints. Do I think we're going to see a Crown Zenith reprint anytime in the future? No, I don't see Crown Zenith getting another reprint, especially considering how deep we are into Scarlet and Violet. And considering how large the last reprint was. Like if we look at Elite Trainer boxes, they're just slightly starting to recover at this point, Basically, at the end of the year, we hit a low, sub $40 for an ETB, and we're just pushing 43 at this point. So very slow recovery. Makes sense after a massive reprint. I mean, these ETBs were like, what, $65, $70 at some points before the reprint. So, and we can look at 151 ETBs. Obviously, these are slowly rising over time. As you can see, there's kind of an upward trend, especially over the last 3 months or so. There's been a large uptick in ETB prices. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're due for 151 reprint as well. I can't imagine that such a successful product for Pokemon will not get reprinted, whereas we're already far past Crown Zenith's time. I wouldn't say far past, but we're at the point where there's already been a reprint. I don't think it's going to get another reprint. They're pushing other products right now, so fair enough. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is pull rates. So for 151, the pull rates were a bit easier, depending on what data you look at, because it's different. There's no real confirmed numbers, but we have pretty accurate ideas that any specific SIR is about 1 in 225, excuse me. Whereas for Crown Zenith, when you look at some of the top cards, the Giratina is about 1 in 333, the Mewtwo is about 1 in 250, the Arceus apparently is 1 in 667, and the Glaceon's about 1 in 286. So that Arceus number kind of, makes me question the data a little bit, so maybe that's a bit off. But as you can see, they are a bit higher overall than 151. And again, you can argue whether the data is accurate or not, but if we do see a large reprint of 151, again, that's even going to push these prices further down as it's easier to pull the top cards. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, the Charizard, which is the top card in the set, is only $109. And I mean, it's a beautiful card, like probably one of my favorite Charizards we've seen in a long time. I do like the one from Brilliant Stars, with that said. But again, those are my top points. Basically, if there is a large reprint of 151, I think that Crown Zenith prices will overtake it. If there isn't a large reprint, obviously that's a completely different story. Pull rates are better for 151, which again is going to, limit the certain value we'll see on cards in the future. And, also one final thing I want to touch on is just the nostalgia factor, right? Like, people love 151 because a lot of the consumer market right now that has money to put into Pokemon is around my age. I'm 28. There's probably a lot of people that are older and, their early 30s or whatnot. And some of you that are probably younger in your early 20s. But a lot of us have disposable income. These are the Pokemon we grew up with. And we love the artworks, we love the cards, even, and not just investors, but collectors in general. It's nostalgia for them. It's what they grew up on. So it's understandable why they want to put their money here, why they want to collect these cards. But with that said, I mean, when you look at Crown Zenith, there's tons of, nostalgic cards too. Like you have the Giratina, you have Arceus, Palkia, Dialga, Leafeon, Mewtwo. I mean, these are very nostalgic cards too for collectors. But then on top of that, you're exposing the younger kids to these types of cards as well. You have some cards like the Zamazenta in here. Let's see what else you got. The Luminion V, Deoxys obviously is an older Pokemon as well. But, you have some of the newer Pokemon, Darkrai, for example, with some of the older Pokemon. So you're really attracting both audiences. And on top of that, people really like opening Crown Zenith, because the pull rates were really good. Not on some of the top chase cards, obviously, but you had the Galarian Gallery with tons of cards you could get, so you could get double hits and stuff like that. And people really love opening packs and getting cards. So even if you're not getting the top chase card, even if the top chase cards are more difficult to pull, people still have fun opening the set because they're often going to get cards from that Galarian Gallery. So at the end of the day, guys, I actually don't think that either of these is an S tier investment, to be honest. Right now, this may be a bit controversial. I would say that Crown Zenith is probably a better investment than 151, especially in the short term, because I think we are going to see a 151 reprint. I think it's inevitable. And I use that word, quite sparingly, because nothing's really a guarantee in investing, right? We can only speculate since we don't know what Pokemon's going to do, but it wouldn't make sense for them not to do it, especially considering they're making as much money off it as they are. If they do reprint it, obviously prices will eventually tank, especially on things like ETBs, UPC. I mean, it really depends what they reprint, right? But we'd imagine we'd see Elite Trainer boxes, which they did with Crown Zenith. They did a large reprint of those, which led to this crash. Maybe the UPCs, maybe booster bundles, whatever, tins, doesn't really matter. If that happens, we see a reprint, there will be a large tanking in price short term. Will it recover long term? Yeah, I think so, obviously. But I think a lot of people are sleeping on Crown Zenith, and I won't pull up Hobbiesville right now, but I've been following some of the larger retailers in Canada, and a lot of them are starting to raise their prices on Crown Zenith. So Hobbiesville had them at, I believe, $54.95 Canadian. So I don't know what that is, like around $40 US, and now they're at $59.99 Canadian. So they raised it like a couple bucks USD. a little more than a couple dollars USD, maybe $3. But they raised their prices, and if you actually look at the total volume that they're selling, like they had 400 or 500 boxes a couple weeks ago, and now they're probably at around 100. I haven't checked in a few days, but like 3 or 4 days ago it was like 180-ish. So yeah, they're selling Crown Zenith ETBs fast. They raised their prices. I don't know if you can still get them from distro. So if someone, I would assume that some Crown Zenith is still available at distro, but if you have distro, comment down below. Let me know. I know there's some of you guys who watch these videos that, have distribution. So that would be interesting information to know as well, since I don't have access to distro. If you guys have anything else you want to comment, you want to share your opinions, thinking I'm crazy for going in on Crown Zenith instead of 151. Now, with that said, guys, if there is a reprint, if there is a reprint of 151 and prices come down, definitely I will be changing my opinion. And at that point, I will say that 151 is a better investment than Crown Zenith. But it's simply based on prices right now, what you can buy ETBs at, with how scarce they are, and prices are kind of inflated. I don't think it's worth buying into 151 at the moment, unless you can get stuff at retail. So if you're buying booster bundles from Walmart or whatever, we've talked about this in other videos. So outside of that, yeah, I would actually be going for Crown Zenith right now. I think the supply's drying up fast. I think that people are going to want to open it in the future because of the Galarian Gallery, and there's just tons of pulls you can get. People enjoyed opening it. And just the fact that, the card value is actually quite strong in comparison to a set like 151 that hasn't been reprinted yet. So I think people are definitely sleeping on Crown Zenith, which, I mean, it's understandable. But when we look at things objectively, when we look at prices, when we look at the reality of the situation where things are going to get reprinted, which things might not, it paints a different picture than what I think a lot of people would expect. So with that said, if you guys can like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, that helps me out a ton. If you're going to shop on eBay, I have an affiliate link. You can click it and do your shopping. It's absolutely free and helps out the channel. With that said, thank you for watching. Stay safe wherever you are in the world, and I'll catch you in the next one.